If someone borrows money from you and never pays it back, most people assume one thing: they don't have the money. But psychology shows something different. In many cases, people who don't pay money back could return it. They just avoid what paying it represents. And once you understand that, their behavior starts to make sense. Let's clear something first. This is not about money management. It's not about poverty. And it's not about bad luck. It's about emotional avoidance. Money, psychologically, is never just money. When someone borrows from you, it creates a subtle shift. They were dependent, even briefly. And for some people, that feeling is deeply uncomfortable. Paying the money back forces them to face that moment again. So instead, the brain looks for relief. In psychology, this is called avoidance behavior. When something creates discomfort, the brain avoids it. Not aggressively, quietly, not by saying no, by saying nothing. Silence becomes a coping strategy. Every day they don't pay you back, their brain feels relief. Not guilt, relief. Because relief is immediate and accountability is uncomfortable. This is why reminders often don't work. When you message them, their anxiety spikes, so they delay. They tell themselves, "I'll reply later." Later becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. And slowly, avoidance becomes the pattern. Not because they planned it, but because the brain always chooses short-term comfort over long-term integrity when self-awareness is low. There's another layer here most people miss: power. Borrowing money creates a temporary power imbalance. You help them. They owe you. Psychologically, that puts them in a lower position. And for people with fragile self-esteem, that feels threatening. So what does the brain do? It looks for a way to restore control. Avoiding you does that. Ignoring messages does that. Acting casual later does that. Without realizing it, not paying you back becomes a way to regain power. Not financially, psychologically. This is why some people avoid you after borrowing money. They're not busy. They're not forgetful. They're protecting their self-image. Every interaction reminds them they were dependent. And the brain hates reminders that threaten identity. So distance becomes the solution. Over time, something else happens. The brain starts justifying. This is called moral self-justification. Thoughts like, "I needed it more at the time. They didn't ask again. They're doing okay without it. If it was serious, they'd remind me." Once these thoughts form, guilt shuts off. And when guilt shuts off, the motivation to repay disappears. At that point, you're not dealing with forgetfulness. You're dealing with a rewritten story, one where they are no longer at fault. This is also why confrontation often fails. When you push emotionally, their brain doesn't become responsible. It becomes defensive. Pressure increases avoidance. Shame increases silence. The harder you push, the more their nervous system wants out, so they withdraw further. Not because they don't understand, but because understanding hurts. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People who don't pay money back are not always bad people, but they are people who choose emotional comfort over responsibility. And unless that pattern changes, it will repeat with money, with promises, with boundaries. So how do you handle this psychologically? First, never lend money you emotionally need back. Because emotional expectation creates attachment. and attachment makes avoidance hurt more. Second, silence is information. If someone avoids you, that tells you everything about how they handle discomfort. Third, clear terms reduce escape routes. Ambiguity gives the brain room to delay and justify. And finally, sometimes distance is the real repayment. Not everyone deserves continued access to you after showing how they treat responsibility. Once you understand the psychology, you stop taking it personally. You stop chasing explanations, and you stop expecting accountability from people who avoid discomfort at all costs. Money reveals behavior, not because it changes people, but because it exposes how they handle pressure, power, and responsibility. And that awareness changes how you lend, how you trust, and who you keep close.